Dave Oancea is better known as Vegas Dave. Vegas Dave is a sports gambler turned tout. A tout is somebody who sells their picks or opinions on who will win tonight's game. He specializes in baseball, but he sells his picks on basically every sport, and he does so via Instagram. Didn't know anything about Vegas Dave, and I, started like, most reporters do. Your first step is you start looking this person up. So come across his Instagram page, and it's glossy photos of him sitting on a Ferrari, throwing cash in the air and all this stuff. It started with the most expensive sports card in history, and what I found was a more interesting story, which is a very complicated person who's had a complicated life. Vegas Dave became well known in the sports gambling circuit in 2015 after collecting $2.5 million on a futures bet that the Kansas City Royals would win the World Series that year. And then the following year, in February, he won $2.3 million payout when the Denver Broncos defeated the Carolina Panthers for Super Bowl 50. So at that time, Oancea was placing bets at two different sports books in Las Vegas under fraudulent Social Security numbers. So that year, when he had the winning ticket for the Denver Broncos, he couldn't collect the money because the federal government was investigating him and told sports books not to pay him out. Vegas Dave took a plea deal, and the plea deal was pretty sweet. He pled guilty to a misdemeanor, being charged with 19 felonies. He was able to plead down to one misdemeanor and forfeit $500,000, and he was banned from Las Vegas sports books for 3 years. Where the story turned for me was when I found out that Dave sold a counterfeit card. If you're new to sports cards, one of the holy grail cards, NBA cards that is the 1986 Fleer Michael Jordan rookie card. I found out that in 2017, he sold a collector, who's a guy who lives in California, this card for $18,000. So I was able to track down the buyer, and I talked to him. I talked to the grading service that confirmed the card was fake. He claims he didn't know it was counterfeit. But yeah, to me, that kind of put in perspective of Vegas Dave. Like, he's a hustler. People think his pick selling business is a lot of smoke and mirrors, and he advertises these packages as ways to make money. My conversations with Dave, I'd ask him what his strategy is, and he says he just has an innate talent of predicting who's going to win. So to me, as a reporter, that makes me skeptical, because you don't believe people who say they can predict the future. There's not a human being who can, right? So after talking to about a dozen Vegas Dave customers, I decided it was time to buy a package myself and to see what the experience was like. Oancea suggested to bet on the Minnesota Twins to win 35 units. So the Twins lost. So that was the first bet that went south. The next wager was a money line bet on the Cincinnati Reds to beat the Chicago Cubs for 20 units. The Reds lost, and so that was $800 down the drain. You give him money, and he sends you an email with like, hey guys, this is the teams you should bet on. And that's it. It's a very simple business. So I found out every state he lived in and started looking at the courts, see if I can find any police or arrest records. And really that opened my eyes, because everywhere that Dave has lived, he's had some kind of either lawsuit or run-in with the law. He's been sued by ex-girlfriends. He's sued ex-girlfriends. He's filed for bankruptcy protection in the early 2000s. And really the list goes on and on. DUI, a domestic violence charge that was downgraded to a disorderly conduct. And then just this kind of whole picture arose. He was very defensive on everything. Brought up the bankruptcy and the foreclosure, and he's like, that's 20 years ago. Then when it got to the counterfeit card, that I found that out later, and after my last interview with him, I found that out. So I emailed him multiple times. Our fact checker emailed him about it, and he did not respond. Really, the conclusion of my reporting is that Dave is not who he says he is. he took a screenshot of the picture and the headline of my article, which is, it seems like it's going to be a story about the guy who sold the most expensive baseball card in the world, which it is, but it makes no mention of the less savory aspects of his career. And so he said, thank you, Forbes, for the feature story, and no link to the story. So that has been his way, which is, you got to hand it to him. It is a smart way to handle bad press.